Good evening. I call to order the July 22nd special meeting of the Committee on Administration, Finance, Law, and Public Services. The time is now 6:07 p.m. And Ms. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Alderman Connors.
Here.
Barbosa. McNamara.
Here.
Santiago.
Present.
Simpson. Gibson.
Here.
Pabon. Smedley. Beloin Savitra.
Here.
And today will be seated Alderman Russell.
I'm actually an alternative.
Yes. You're sitting in for Alderman Smedley? Thank you, sir. And Alderman McAdam?
Renee.
Okay,
Oh,
correct. Thank you.
thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight, the first item on the agenda is the presentation of the audited financial statement fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. May I have a motion?
I make a motion to accept and refer to the full council with a neutral recommendation.
Motion to accept and refer with neutral from Alderwoman Beloin Saavedra, seconded by Alderman Russell. All in favor, say aye.
Nope.
Oh, wait, sorry. Apologies. At this time, I'd like to call up Leslie Zoll and Jonathan Perugini for them to make their presentation on this item. Getting ahead of myself.
Good evening.
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 Thank you very much for inviting me to come tonight to present the audit results for June 30th, 2023. Yeah, please. So part of my agenda for this evening is to first start with just talking about the scope of our audit services. What do we do for the city? We're going to then talk about high-level results of the audit. I realize some of the financial data is at a point in time as of June 30th, 2023, so we're just going to do very high-level snapshot of some numbers at that time, since we're already a year past that. Then I'm going to talk about the tested programs in the state and federal single audit, our governance communication, and then, and then some industry insights on new GASB standards that are coming down the pike. What do I hit? This one?
And it turns it, yeah. and then
Okay, great.
back goes the-
So just to describe to you the scope of our audit services, we do render an opinion on the city's financial statements. And I think it's important to note that I say the city's financial statements. The city's responsible for those financial statements and the numbers in them. We come to audit them and render an opinion on whether or not those numbers are materially representative of government, of generally accepted accounting principles. With that, we also render an in relation to opinion on the schedule of federal awards and state financial statements, which we call the state and federal single audits. So those schedules are in relation to the financial statements as a whole. We also express an opinion on compliance with laws and regulations as it relates to the major state and federal programs that we test. And we'll go over what we've tested later in the presentation. The last two bullets on this slide, I just want to make a note that we don't opine on internal controls. We do provide you with a report on internal control over the financial statements as a whole and also over compliance with major state and federal programs that we test, but we do not opine on internal controls.
What do you mean when you say that?
So we gain an understanding of internal controls based on our audit steps and our audit requirements under government auditing standards. We do not say the city is We don't opine that the city's internal controls are good or bad. We just report you any findings that we report as a result of our audit.
Thank you.
As far as audit opinions go, for both 22 and 23, the city did receive unmodified reports, both on the financial statement side and the federal and state awards. That means that the city received clean opinions on both the financial statements and the compliance testing that we performed on the state and federal single audit. That's what you'd want to receive in each and every year. The city has done that for both those years.
What would a modified look like, so we could understand?
So a modified report would be a disclaimer. If we didn't have the information to audit and we couldn't render an opinion, that would be an example of something that would be outside an unmodified opinion. Or you could have a qualified opinion where the financial statements were not in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles.
And none of those scenarios happened.
Correct.
Thank you.
As I said earlier, although we don't opine on internal control, we do need to report to you any issues that we find as a result of our audit work. And so, as far as the financial statement audit goes, the city did receive 2 material weaknesses, and I'm going to explain the definition of those later in the presentation, and 1 compliance issue over the financial statements. However, the federal single audit and the state single audit had no findings, no material issues to report to you, and no compliance issues. So clean opinion on the single audits. As far as financial highlights, I did want to just note for you this evening at 6/30/2023, the net position of the city was $46 million as of 6/30/2023. This net position figure is on a full accrual basis of accounting, so it includes all your long-term assets, all your long-term liabilities, all of your governmental funds, except for pension. That increased in total $168,000 from the previous year. And you'll see on this slide, governmental activities include your general fund, special revenue capital projects funds. Your business type activities is your water enterprise fund. And then I just wanted to show the historical data on the general fund. This is on a modified basis of accrual. The accounting is a little bit different for the general fund. It's more of a current resource type of fund. As of 6/30/2023, total fund balance was $25 million. This amount also includes $7 million of assigned fund balance. So that $7 million represents $3.6 million that you've designated to balance the '24 budget, and $3.5 million for Board of Education. Currently, the unassigned fund balance at $17.9 million is about 7% of budgeted expenditures. The general fund balance increased for fiscal year '23 by $751,000. And then I just wanted to bring to your attention some snapshots throughout the financial statements. The financial statements are very large. They're, numerous pages long, about 125 pages, right?
173.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So I just wanted to give you a snapshot of some things to take a look at when you're looking through those financial statements. Property tax collections are at 96.34% at 6/30/23. As far as budgeted results go, revenues were $573,000 more than budgeted, which is a good thing. Expenditures were $178,000 less than budgeted at 6/30/2023. And then it's good to know the funding policies of the city, so I just wanted to give you some stats on your pension plans. Your police pension is 53.95% funded. Fire is 63% funded. The MERS program is 68% funded, even though it's a state pension fund, so you don't have too much control over that. And then you have the elected official plan, that's currently pay-as-you-go. There's not too many people currently in that plan, and that plan will increasingly drop off as members age. One thing I did not note on this slide that I would be remiss if I didn't share with you, if you look on the financial statements for the ARPA fund, you do still have 30 million still to spend on ARPA grant funding. You have until December 31st of this year of 2024 to obligate those funds. And then you have till December of 2026 to actually liquidate those obligations. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. Hopefully you guys have a plan on which to fund that.
But I just want to reiterate, so you said 30 million in ARPA, and we have from this December to the following December to allocate it?
She's referring to at this snapshot in time.
At 6/30/2023, you had 30 million. So in '24, you may have less than
Yeah,
that.
so what's happening is she's just mentioning the snapshot as of the financial
Thank you
statements.
for that
We,
clarification.
yeah,
because I think some of
we've
us
spent
might
more
get
money in the
excited.
current year.
I just want to make sure that you guys know that you have till 12/31/24 to obligate the funds.
Just point, Mr. Chair,
Yes. Alderman
that's a point of
McNamara.
clarification. So anything that's encumbered by 12/31 of this year can be, you have another year of grace to,
You actually have 2 years of grace to
Grace.
actually spend
Correct.
out the funds, but they do have to be obligated, so they have to be encumbered by the end of this year.
Just, pardon me, I'm going to note that Alderwoman Sanchez has joined.
And Jonathan, at some point, would you be able to tell us what's remaining in that fund?
I don't have it offhand. I can get the numbers if people need it, but I don't have that
You know,
today.
But-
at some point in time.
Okay.
Thanks, Jonathan.
point of information to the Alderwoman, I received a report from Mr. Benjamin that there is $550,000 uncommitted.
And I received a phone call that I think you were on where the mayor said that money is being allocated for the Mount Pleasant project, so,
That's what I heard.
yes.
We're all on the same page.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes, Mr. Benjamin would know a lot more.
Please.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's quite okay. So I want to talk about internal control findings and what they mean, and the definitions thereof in a city's financial statement audit. There's essentially four findings, four levels of findings, if you will. The first level of findings, if you will, are, just things that we noted during the audit. They're not material. They don't rise to the level of something that needs to be in writing to be discussed with any of the council members, just quick things that we think that they can improve on. We would have that discussion with management. That would not be in writing. So that would be the lowest tier of findings. The next tier would be the management letter recommendations. So that's something where they're not material, just crossing T's, dotting I's, something that we found best practice that could be instituted in the city that we thought would be beneficial for those charged with governance to hear. So those would be in writing, and that's what we call our management letter recommendations. The third tier of findings is a significant deficiency. We found something, an error, we made an adjustment in the financial statements. It's not something that's material, but something that should be concerning if not fixed in the future. And then that last tier is a material weakness. We did find some errors in the financial statements. We do think that there's a concern in terms of internal controls, and we feel it's a material issue that needs to be addressed.
Can we stay there for a minute? So
Hmm?
then what is the 1 and 2 bank reconciliations and fiscal year end close procedures? Are those the two things you're identifying that need to be addressed?
Yes. So in the financial statements, there's two material weaknesses. One is on the timeliness of bank recs, which now is 6/30, after 6/30/2024, and the finance office has done a tremendous job to elevate that and make sure that the bank statements are timely, but at the time of our audit, they were not.
Yeah. The other piece on it, the bank recs, why you see them carry over for each year is because we didn't finish the 22 audit. It was issued December 15th of 2023, so unfortunately, it snowballs into the next year because it wasn't done on a monthly basis. So now we have it, so procedures are in place. We originally had an administrative accountant who handled all the bank recs. She had medical, family medical, and was on workers' comp leave. And so when she did retire, stuff was behind. Now we split it up between the new administrative accountant who has banking background and all our accounting assistants. So it's a partially completed internal control report that will be removed for '24. So me and Leslie went ad nauseum back and forth on this one, but I understand her standpoint because the 22 wasn't issued until December of '23. It snowballs into '23, so we will have that rectified for '24.
So the audit that we'll be going into will be exactly on time.
Yes, that's what we're shooting for.
That's our hope.
Yeah.
We never know what happens, but that's our hope.
Oh, pardon. Alderwoman Cervedra, just so you know, the mic was not on, but in
I'm
the,
sorry, I'm just because I'm not doing proper procedures by raising my hand.
but where was Alderman Russell on that?
I wasn't finished. As long as we're staying on this page just for a second, did you already talk about the number 2?
No, I'm gonna right now.
Okay, thank you.
So fiscal year-end close procedures.
Hold on, Alderwoman Scott? Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to know why we don't know what's going to happen now. Why we don't have a plan to fix this issue with
Okay.
things being on time.
No, we do have a plan, and we believe we're going to do it around the normal course. So what happens is '22, we were down almost 75% of staff. We lost higher level staff. We lost a deputy finance director who handled the audit. We lost an administrative accountant who handled all the bank recs. And so when people leave at the city, they give 2 weeks' notice. When you go to hire, you have to modify the job description, update it. You have to post it, you have to get the union to agree to it. Then the next part is you have to post internally. You wait a month on that. Then you post it externally. You wait another month. Then you have to review the applications, then do a first round of interview with an independent panel. That takes some time. Then you have to post then you have to do a second interview to make sure that you're getting qualified staff. So when we lost almost 75% of the staff, hiring takes time, and so people leave in 2 weeks, but to hire them takes a lot longer, and ended up losing a lot of staff in '22, and we were finally fully staffed May of '23. So to give an understanding of it, just because people leave, you can't just hire people and say, here, figure it out. There's a knowledge transfer that didn't happen. And so when you only have 1 or 2 people that know what to do,
Excuse me, John. Sure. This is number 2 on the agenda. We're asking Jonathan to check in on progress made and those issues. I'd like to hear from our auditor, if nobody objects, to get through this and ask her questions, because item 2 deals with progress made between '22 and '23, and then what's your plan of action moving forward? So
can give
I hate to
that.
be a stickler for the agenda, but
We will
let's stick
circle
to it.
back. We will circle back to you on item 2, and we'll proceed accordingly.
I would like to talk about number 2, if I could, please, first. So, I do want to mention that post-COVID, there's been a lot of turnover in finance positions in the industry as a whole. So there's a number of municipalities that were in this particular boat. I think that lessons learned is that we need to have formal procedures in place, so if turnover does occur, there's cross-utilization, there's, a plan in place to cover those people if they were to leave. There's things in the audit that, once bank recs are done, we're not necessarily audit ready quite yet. There's closing entries that need to be done. Agata has done a tremendous job to get herself up to speed very quickly. We did issue, as Jonathan had said, the city issued their 2022 in December, and we've now issued 23 6 months later. So just that alone can tell you the progress that the city has made now that they're fully staffed. However, now that they're fully staffed, they still need to get up to speed. They need to know what needs to be done to be audit ready so that we can perform the audit timely, and that's why I can't guarantee, Ms. Scott, that we'll be on time because I haven't started yet. But the finance office does have a plan in place. I'm meeting with the mayor tomorrow. We're gonna meet and discuss that timing and what is needed by the city. The compliance finding just relates to the timeliness of reporting. In case you don't know, OPM requires financial statements to be issued 6 months after year end. So the financial statements are due 12/31. You do have the ability to extend that for another 6 months. After that, OPM will contact the city, which had happened in fiscal year 2022. And Jonathan had given them bi-weekly updates. As far as the timing of the federal and state single audit, the state single audit is due at the same time as the financial statements. However, the federal single audit is not due until 9 months after fiscal year end. Even though we may have met in '23, the deadline for the state single audit and the financial statements uniform guidance was still not met, because we did not issue prior to March 31st. So that finding still remained. Does anybody have any questions on the internal controls or the compliance finding?
Do you have a grace period?
What do you mean by grace period?
Alderman Russell, Mike?
If it's not done on time, or can you apply for,
For the federal single audit, there is no extensions. For the state single audit, you can ask for an extension for 1 month at a time for 6 months.
thank you.
And the other part with the extensions on a monthly basis, it's got to be approved by the auditors as well as the state for each one. So you have to give a cause, what you're doing, and then also talk about what you plan on doing in order to get it by an estimated completion date.
Did we have them?
We did, we were shooting for June 30th and we got it for that a few days after.
Thank you.
was the actual.
Mr. Chairman,
Alderman McNamara?
you mentioned the $56 million in, out of practice, $56 million in ARPA money that's come into the city, and also with reference to the pandemic that began in March 2020 for me and all of us. Is this influx of money, has that complicated issues in terms of doing your
Influx
audits?
of ARPA funding, it has certainly added a layer of administrative work to administer the grant. But I don't think it's necessarily hindered issuance of financial statements.
Not,
That
not,
answers your question.
not related to non-compliance, in other words?
No. So these management letter comment, recommendations on this next slide, these are, issues that we think are just best practices, things that we noted that are not material in nature. Like I said, it's crossing Ts, dotting Is. The first recommendation is on grant accounting. Now, part of this revenue recognition issue is also in the capital projects fund that was material in nature, but you do have a lot of other grants that are not, and so I wanted to reiterate that controls need to be in place to recognize revenue appropriately. And again, we're meeting with the mayor tomorrow and the whole entire finance office, and we're gonna go over what I mean by that, so that, we can put, they can put a policy in place. As far as, just improving internal controls, allowance for doubtful accounts, specifically on the tax side, should be reviewed every year. The subsidiary ledger down in the tax office should be reconciled to their financial management system on a yearly, actually a monthly basis. And any discrepancies reconciled timely. On the capital asset side, currently you have one person doing capital assets. There always should be one preparer and one reviewer, just to make sure that there's nothing missing. General liability reserve, that comment is related to just making sure that that liability is analyzed each and every year, and if it needs to be adjusted on the financial statements, it should be. In terms of fund structure, I've had this comment in a number of years, as it relates to just the efficiency of the audit process. Currently, right now, every time there's a new grant, they create a new fund. If you look at the back of the report now, there is a lot of funds in the city. We are recommending that they combine some of those it just makes things a little bit more administratively easier, less administrative burden on the finance staff if there's less funds, less accounts to reconcile. And then journal entries should have a preparer and a reviewer. There should always be someone who's reviewing those journal entries. There's a lot of new staff now in the finance office. Someone should be who's knowledgeable of those journal entries should be reviewing those to catch the errors timely. And then the last recommendation is just on fraud risk. As those charged with governance, you should always have fraud on top of mind, have those conversations amongst yourselves, have that assessment done in certain areas where you think there's a concern. And you can do that in-house, or you can have someone do those. Does anybody have any questions on any of these before I move on to the single audits?
Don't see any.
So like I said, on the federal single audit, there was no compliance issues, which is fabulous. No internal control findings noted. 2022, there was $55.9 million of awards expended on federal awards. In 2023, there were 78. The programs that we tested, Education Stabilization Fund on the Board of Education, the ARPA Fund, and Special Education Cluster, which is IDEA B. It's an educational grants fund at the Board of Ed. That was tested in 2022. In 2023, we tested ESSER, ARPA again, drinking water, and Title I at the Board of Education. And again, no findings to report to you. On the state side, same thing, nothing to report to you. In 2022, you spent $150 million. In 2023, you spent $196 million. The programs that we test, one of them is the Alliance District. It's one of your largest grants in the city. In 2022, we tested 2% education grant, priority school districts, and tiered pilot. In 2023, we audited Alliance District again, as well as early care and education. And if I could just share with you a couple things that were required to communicate to those charged with governance. The new standards out for these two audits we're discussing tonight, GASB 87 and 96. I think it's important to note that those governmental accounting standards were very robust and took a lot of time to implement. Jonathan and a lot of the departments had to accumulate a lot of agreements and contracts related to those. Once all of that information was gathered, we did determine it was immaterial to the financial statements, but we don't know that until we do the research. So you will see in that governance communication that was delivered to you that you'll see those uncorrected misstatements in the financial statements. The city determined them to be immaterial for implementation.
Is that, Mr. Chairman? So that these uncorrected misstatements I see the correction is $751,000 on, or they weren't material, is that what you're saying?
They were not material to the total primary government net position of the
And
cities.
as auditors do adjusting journal entries, the listing you provided were all the ways to balance the books, so to speak?
Right, so in your governance communication, there was the past adjustments and also the list of adjustments that we processed. And as far as estimates within the financial statements, I just want to share with you some of those significant estimates. Capital asset useful lives. If those useful lives change, so does the depreciation, which so does the total capital asset number. Net pension liabilities and net OPEB liabilities are based on actuarial assumptions. If those assumptions change, those numbers can change dramatically. So I just want you guys to be aware of that. And also incurred but not reported liabilities, those are in the internal service fund. Those are based on estimates of claims, based on claim history. So if those claims come in that might be different than what was planned, then that liability increases or decreases accordingly.
Claims from employees or claims from outside?
These are health claims
Health.
for your employees. In terms of standards coming down the pike that Jonathan would need and the city would need to address, in 2024, we have a buy year. If you don't have any accounting changes or corrections, it doesn't apply to you. The omnibus statement are just clarifications of older standards. So in 2024, there's not a lot of changes to the financial statements that need to be done. In fiscal year 25, we do have compensated absences, which may or may not materially affect that liability and the calculation of that materiality. It's based on the benefits that the city provides its employees. And as we get closer to that, we can give guidance on how to do that. And then 2026 is more of the bigger one on financial reporting model. So the financial statements will look a little different in 2026. In terms of audit standards, we need to comply now with SAS 143 to 145. So our audit work will increase in 2024 related to this. The standards board decided that we needed to modernize auditing a little bit with the influx of digital and IT-related items within the financial management systems and anything electronic as it relates to those IT issues. So we'll be doing some more work in the IT area. If we need a specialist, we'll have someone come in from our team. We also will look more at significant estimates and the impact that it will have on the financial statements. At any point in time, if you guys want to know more about what's going on in the industry, we have a number of webinars and articles. You can actually just scan that QR code, filter to state and local government, and there's a whole slew of articles there. In particular, I just want to make you aware of the green energy tax credits that you guys can apply for. If you have projects, any green energy projects, that's taxed back to you, and the municipalities can get money back for that. So just keep that in mind as you start any new projects. And does anybody have any questions?
Alderwoman Belen Saavedra.
Thank you so much for the report, the work that you do, the summary that you gave us. But I have to say, for many of us, this is a language we don't speak, right? The whole
Understood.
accounting and auditing procedure. So in a nutshell, if you can think about the last two audits that you did in New Britain, and I'm having just a little bit of a problem processing outside of the timeliness of it all, what some of the big pitfalls were. In English, can you tell us what would be the two recommendations outside of timeliness that we would need to address?
Bank recs need to be timely. Corrections and reconciling items on the bank rec needs to be resolved, and journal entries posted if possible.
Okay. Did you relate any of that to us needing extra staff, or with the finance department fully staffed with new people and up to speed?
So right now, it's hard to tell. We're, because the staff is so new, at this point, I don't think they need new staff. The staff just need to be trained, and there needs to be procedures in place, and cross-utilization of those employees so that the work can get done.
And if I heard you correct, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, if I heard you correctly, from 2022 to 2023, you saw a remarkable improvement in the staffing and the availability of staff to produce the information you needed to complete the audit.
We saw, yes, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
There's still work to be done, there's still learning curves to be overcome, but tremendous improvement from one year to the next.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
One more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman McNamara?
I found the tables at the end of the audit very helpful in terms of giving the big picture on things. You noted that over 10 years, the indebtedness has, against the maximum, which is we're about 43% 10 years ago, and now we're at 56% in terms of total indebtedness. But you cited a figure that was actually close to $1 billion would be the absolute limit on.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at that
Yeah,
particular
you don't have,
table.
yeah.
What table are you referring to? 9,
That's
10?
table 10.
Table 10 with the statement of indebtedness?
If I may, John, Alderman McNamara, I do believe when I read it, it said that the city was far below what the maximum indebtedness is allowed for.
Yeah, there was a much larger figure, I agree. It
Yeah,
went
so
from-
the debt limit is 948 million.
Yes, yep.
And current debt, I believe, is like 315 million?
Well, the
Well,
applicable
This is
to
as
the,
of 6/30/23,
Well,
so.
based on the audit, not based on right now.
oh, you're looking at the general outstanding,
Yeah.
right, the 300? Yeah, for the net debt limit, it's 518, so that's what we take into account on table 10 is what he's referring to, and then it feeds off table 9 is how you usually get it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Valencia Dedra?
I'm sorry, I did have another question. So New Britain is not the only municipality you audit?
No.
Okay. So comparatively speaking, with all the other municipalities that you audit, are other municipalities have timeline issues or other issues that come into play similar to ours?
Or staffing.
So, like I said, there's a number of municipalities since COVID that have been struggling with the timeliness of reporting. OPM is aware of it. They're trying to work with the municipalities that are struggling to help them with resources or whatever they need, but the city of New Britain is not the only one.
Thank you.
While we possibly wait for more questions, Alderwoman Candace Scott?
I just wanted to circle back. I appreciate your explanation and everything. However, I have a hard time accepting like excuses, like things being late, as important as the audit. That I think that I just want to make sure that we do have that plan in place, and, you know, on behalf of the people, that it is unacceptable, that we do need to be on time. And even if this is happening in other places, like, I hold myself accountable for myself. I mean, maybe it's just the way I was raised, but like, things just have to get done, you know, and we have to figure out ways to get them done on time, things that are important, because not knowing exactly how much money is there, or it's messy, you know? So I just want to make sure it's transparent to the people that this was late. And we need to be accountable and make sure that we're doing better.
We are doing better. The 22 audit took 18 months to finish. The 23 one was done in 6 months, and now we're back on schedule with the 24 audit. So the other piece I wanted to bring up was the rating agency upgrades. So we were given an upgrade back in May, despite not having the audit done. So most of them, usually they'd say, hey, we need to know where is your audit. We shared with them internal documents and reports, and they were good with it and willing to give us an upgrade. So they understood the plight that other towns are also in. And so I do understand, but it takes time in order to get it where we need to be, and we actually are in there. We're actually at the right step where we need to be back with 24. The other piece I wanted to bring up with controls that we need to do and are working towards, with the 22 audit, we took our time because the bank recs were off. That was the big issue on that. We caught them up. Now we're working on getting a monthly. The second part with 23 was grants and capital projects. We had turnover in those positions, or people were pulled in different directions. Now we have it, and we understand that we need to do the state payments to the city first, because that will help with testing with the auditors. The capital projects, we need to get retainage deferred revenue as well as accounts receivable done faster, because then it will help with the scope and the testing that the auditors do. So we do have an idea, we do have a game plan, and we're going to hit that hard in 24. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. There is a game plan, and we're back on track, and we're going to continue to go hard with the 24 audit. So, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman? Sure. Okay, just a final point. Obviously, the most concerning issue for all of us is the non-compliance issue. And when it says that the city no longer qualifies as a low-risk entity for federal single audit filing, year over year, in 2020, there were no issues. That was Bloom Shapiro, which CLA subsequently acquired, I believe. In 2021, there was, I think, a minor, yeah. And again, no deficiencies throughout. You know, that should be recognized. But that, if this is year over year, no longer qualifies as a low-risk entity, can you unpack that for me a bit, being
Sure.
being a liberal arts major?
So, low-risk entity on the federal single audit. There's a number of questions that you have to respond to on whether or not you're a low-risk auditee or not. It has to do with if you have any material weaknesses in internal control, you no longer qualify. If you have qualified opinions on your programs, on your federal programs, that also preclude you from being a low-risk entity. What that means from an audit perspective is that we're testing more to make sure that the federal government spending is done correctly. So instead of testing 20%, we test 40%. So we're testing more because there's issues within the audit. And that's for every 2 years. So if you were to clear those findings in 24, you probably wouldn't be a low-risk auditee until 25.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Mack. Yeah, Alderwoman Valencia-Vedra.
Before we move on, I'm going to take exception to some of the language Alderwoman Scott used. I think it's offensive to say that there are excuses versus factual reasons for certain things to happen. I was raised, too, with a great work ethic, but that doesn't mean that things in my job wouldn't come up from time to time that might slow my production down, and that would have nothing to do with excuses, but have to do with the factual reality of, in your office in 2022, having 75% of your staff turning over and needing to reteach people. So I just want to make a distinction. Words are important, language is important, how we frame the narrative is important. And we're not here to score brownie points for our individual wards or our individual constituents. We're here to talk about the financial solvency of the city, how we are responsible and account for it, and that we're moving forward. I think it is a great thing to say that unfortunately after an 8-month process. We went to 6 months, and now we're on schedule for the next audit coming up. And if we're looking, as Alderman McNamara brought up, there were no issues in 2020 and no issues in 2021. So we're not talking about a long-standing issue that has been unaddressed by the Finance Department. We're talking about 2022 was a significant issue that was raised by the audit and obviously felt by you and other members of the Finance Department with having a 75% turnover. So I like to talk factual, and I like the narrative to be appropriate. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just so everyone knows, I have a couple very boring questions, but as the chair, I wait to go last. So would you like my boring questions first, or do we want to do this? We'll just, Alderwoman Scott, and then we'll circle back to my very boring
Love to hear
questions.
them, Mr. Chairman.
My boring questions? So we'll just pause this, because I feel like this is a sort of wrap-up discussion, but my very boring questions, I'm a solo business owner, I use QuickBooks, I reconcile once a month. Can you please just go over what the bank rec process was and what it is now, like 30,000-foot view?
30,000-foot view, the bank rec process was very behind. It wasn't done on a monthly basis. Now we have individuals who do it on a monthly. We have a checklist, and we have names assigned with each bank statement. We don't have just one bank account. We have about 30, and we have to go through them. And back in the day, bank recs used to be easy. You take cash in, you do checks, that's it. Now you have to deal with credit cards, ways of technology, money coming in, third-party vendors. You pay your parking with a credit card. It goes through a third-party thing. Then they remit money. We now have permits done electronically. So all of this stuff, it deals with a lot more patience, and you need higher-level people to look at it because there's fees associated with it. Whether you're charging it to the customers or not, you need to account for transactions that go in. So it's evolved exponentially in the past few years. So to help out with the citizens and the customers to make transactions easier, but administratively it comes with a cost on the back end, because if it's just checks and cash, those are easy. Those are easy to chase down. You have posting of interest, you have outstanding items, deposit in transit. Those are easy to find. It's tougher when you're getting it from iCloud, and iCloud is taking Visa, MasterCard, but then American Express is posting on a separate day. So you have to chase things down, and it's not as easy. So I'm trying not to bore you guys with the complexities of it, but I want you to understand it's not as cut and dry as it used to be.
So would it be safe to say there are more people available now who are trained to do these bank recs than there were before?
Yes, because in the past, there was only one person handling it. It was very far behind. So we got the accounting assistants to learn how to do it and to be cross-trained with it so that multiple can do the smaller ones. Obviously, the pooled cash one is a giant thing. If no other specific purpose is set, it flows into that, and that one is the bear that takes most of the time.
So you've got folks more or less cross-trained who, if someone falls off, someone else can step in to do
We
that
do.
bank rec? Great.
We do, and that was 22. 22, we had a lot of issues where only one person had it, and I had to try to figure out how to do the bank recs and spread it among people, and they all came back with questions because it's not as easy as we'd like to think.
What system does the city use? I mean, I use QuickBooks. Do you use that or something far more advanced?
No, we do Central Square, which is our financial system.
Okay. And last question, what would be an example of a journal entry on a bank rec? You were just mentioning there were journal entries. I have to use them for weird things like member equity or, weird stuff like that, but
Journal entries can happen with regular recurring ones of posting the actual deposit, or they could be in the form of cash receipts. Usually cash receipts are when you're taking in money, but if money's being wired in, then usually do a journal entry in order to post it. Posting of interest is another one. Transferring funds out. That's the other part too with banking, with all the different bank accounts. You do internal transfers from within the TD bank accounts, or you're also sending them externally to the debt service accounts in order to pay things or to cover direct deposits.
It sounds a little bit more complicated than my one-man law firm, but thank you. Those are my boring questions. We can resume the exciting talk now. Alderwoman Scott, and then Alderwoman Barbosa.
Yeah, so what I was saying is not an individual constituent concern. It is a citywide concern that has been a concern for a lot of people here in the city. So I'm trying to speak on behalf of the city, that this is important, and that's why that was raised. There have been several complaints and several concerns about this being late because we need transparency within the city. I'm not going to apologize for my words because I'm explaining things very clearly so that people can understand. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that I was raised. I mean it in a way that we need to hold ourselves accountable. Okay? Our city needs to be perfect, on point. And so that means that things need to be done in a timely manner, on time. And if it's not, then we should be punishing ourselves in a sense, right? Or making sure that it's done on time. Even if people are not available, we need to make sure that we have a backup plan in place. So I'm just, on behalf of the people are concerned that it was late, and this is a valid concern to bring up, and I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm not going to apologize for the narrative that we do need to be on time with things. And this is not an individual concern for anybody. So I just want to make sure that's clear, and that this is, it is a valid concern that I raise.
Thank you, Alderwoman Scott. Alderwoman Barbosa?
With these two last audits, 22 and 23, are you able to provide the debt for 22, 23, and what our debt is currently?
Yeah, the debt is in the financial statements. There's a long-term debt footnote. It should be like, what, 9? No, 7, I think it is.
I think it's 7.
Yeah,
Can you point us to a page number?
sure, 1 second.
The changes in long-term debt are on page 57 of your ACFR, footnote 7.
7.
I believe it's 316 million in bonds and notes outstanding versus 325 million last year.
Correct.
Then can you explain where the $500,000 reference was earlier? 500 million, I mean.
Oh, the 500 million, I believe, also takes in the pension funds, right?
The 313 also is only the governmental activities. You also have the water enterprise fund debt as well, which is lower on that table. So all the Clean Water Fund loans, notes payable are also included in that debt limit table.
It's buried in the big one.
Could I piggyback on Alderwoman Barbosa, just for clarity's sake? So when we have debt in one of our special revenues or enterprises, that money, they pay it off. It's not coming off the city ledger, correct, John?
Yes, so
So-
when, oh.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, Water Fund has drinking water state revolving where the debt service comes out of that. The Sewer Fund also has debt for the clean water piece of it. And then other than that, it's mostly general obligation bonds, whether city capital projects, school capital projects, those are grouped together, so.
So in terms of our general fund budget that directly affects our tax levy, what do we have in outstanding debt?
The general fund would be the
That
top,
would
right?
probably be that first number, that
The
300,
322. Oh, 314.
the 315.
That's what that's what I said. So 315, which sounds a lot better than 500 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 500 is everything, including pension and sewer and all the different types.
Okay. And again, if I may, just for clarification purposes, I'm not sure that this is the administration that bonded for pension. If I understand, it was previous administrations that bonded for pension. As a matter of fact, I think it was a Democratic mayor who bonded for pension, and I may just have been on his council at the time that that happened, too. So some of this debt obligation is not all about the last 11 years of the current administration. It is a accumulation of years and years and years of various things being bonded, because we just didn't either want to raise taxes to pay for it, or we just didn't have the funds. But I just, especially on the pension fund, I wanted to make that very clear that this administration did not bond for pension. And then I just also wanted to make clear that we have the pension, the 315, that affects our tax levy versus the water department and sewer department. Golf course, for instance, they would pay out of their own funds for anything bonded within those enterprise or special revenues.
Yes.
And that ultimately, I believe it's $948 million is what the city is allowed to bond up to. I am not suggesting that we do so. I'm just saying, if you look at the 315 as opposed to the 948, I believe in the audit, the language used by the auditors were, we are way below where the city could be in terms of its debt service.
Yeah, for that debt is 7 times your annual revenue.
Yeah.
Your
Okay, I
annual
just-
tax revenue.
Because I think it's very important for the council to understand the differences in where we accumulate debt and what pot of money pays it off. But debt is debt, and I get it, but I think that part's important. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Alderwoman.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no remarks, I'd like to make a motion that we refer the report from the auditor with a neutral recommendation.
Already made.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Made and seconded.
want to move the question, Alderman?
You can,
Yes,
we've got some items on the.
yes,
agenda.
that's my, yeah, I think we can take other items out with Mr. Perugini, but I want to thank the auditors for coming.
Thank you very much.
Is there someone else in the audience that's with you that you'd like to introduce?
I would love to. Grace Moswitza is the director on the audit, and she's with me tonight.
Hi, Grace. Thank you both for doing your work on behalf of our city. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so having no further discussion, the motion to refer with a neutral recommendation, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much for that presentation. Moving on to the second item, the status of Finance Department staffing and capacity. May I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept and refer to the council
With a neutral, favorable,
with a neutral, I'm sorry.
thank you, and seconded by Alderman Russell. Any discussion on this item?
I think actually,
Point of
the
order.
agenda,
Oh, yes.
If I could,
Sorry.
is that really something that a motion, did that come from the council? Was that just for discussion purposes tonight?
Status.
I don't know really if that's something that a motion,
is necessary.
correct. It seems to me that you're just having a discussion.
Right.
That's just my opinion. Because it certainly didn't come from the council. The first one came from the council, correct?
Yeah. Well, if there are no objections from other aldermen, I'll accept that, since the audit report has been presented to the council previously.
So, pulling an audible, this is a discussion item now, and we're taking it off the agenda. All right. Do I need a roll call vote on that?
Well, you're not taking it off the agenda,
Okay.
you're just discussing it without a motion.
Thank you, thank you. So, do we have any discussion of item 2? Seeing no further discussion, we will move along to the third item on the agenda. Thank you. The response progress made on establishing formal financial close process findings for 2022. This is applicable for a motion, I believe. So may I have a motion on this item?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to accept and refer to the full council with a neutral recommendation.
Is there,
No?
I accept.
Oh, that's right, that's 2022, we really can't, right?
This,
22, right? This wasn't referred by the council, so this is just for
It's a
discussion.
discussion. So most of,
The rest of them are just discussion.
item, plan of action? I would,
Just a point of order, I think actually this ground has been covered before, but I think it would be most helpful in terms of reporting is for Mr. Perugini, maybe to just reiterate or outline. I take his word that 6 months late is better than a year late in terms of corrections being made for the 22, but I think council's most interested, Jonathan, in actually, are there any resources or other things you need to make that non-compliance item go away? And could you just outline your plan of action to make sure there's no non-compliance next year?
So if I may, Mayor and Mr. Chairman, then can we take 3 and 4 together? It seems like 3 and 4 would go nicely together.
That-
As a discussion.
Yeah, the findings were identical for both years, I agree.
Thank you. Yeah, the bank recs, me and Leslie went back and forth on that respectful disagreement on it. Because the bank recs in '22 was the big issue. We had one person who was very behind, she left, and then we had to break it up. So now we have a checklist, we have responsible parties with it, we broke out all the accounts, all the trust accounts, and split them up. So when we started the '23 audit, we made sure that we did the bank recs first. So we covered that piece. But the reason that it's still in the audit is because we couldn't start it until after December 15th of 2023. So by there, you're already saying your first half of '23 wasn't done in a timely manner. So that's why we came to an agreement that, yeah, post it, but it can't be the same comment as last year. It's got to be a partial completion, and then we'll finish it with '24. So the bank rec one's going to fall off. The second one, when we were talking about grants and capital projects, the individual who handled grants was split between revenue collections and helping with that. And now we were able to come to an agreement so that she could focus on the grants piece. And so we're aware of that. It's going to help out with '24 because the issue with '23 is the grants, the state payments one was done towards the end, and it didn't give the auditors proper timing or testing in order to come up with a applicable sample size. And so we're going to fix that with '24. The second part with the budget and capital projects, I had a budget and capital projects fiscal officer that I promoted within, and things didn't work out. And then he ended up leaving. So we lost a position that was moving up. I promoted him internally. He ended up going to another town. And the replacement we have now started January of '24, so January 2nd. And now we're getting him up to speed so that the other issue with the audit was AR retainage and deferred revenue on the capital projects was behind. And the answer was yes, because there was significant turnover. I used to handle it. I got promoted to a higher position, had to train people. The person I trained didn't work out, had to wait to fill somebody else. So we're going to address that with '24. So that's item 2. Item 3 with the uniform compliance, we have 6 months after to finish it with the state, but after that you're given 6 one-month extensions that you have to file each month, and I would do that with the state as well as the GFOA, the national one. And on that, I request it, the auditors approve it, and then the state has to approve it. They could very easily say no, and you're given 6 months, so as of June 30th of '24 was the last applicable day to really do it, and we issued it, and it ended up coming a couple days after July 3rd when everything got finalized and produced. So even though you have 6 months per state statutes, they still grant you 6 months after that to catch up. So we're now on track with it, and now fiscal year '24. As Leslie had mentioned, we're having a meeting tomorrow, all hands on deck. I have all the applicable pieces for the ones with the management comments. We're going to have the deputy there. We're going to have the banking piece. We're going to have the budget and capital projects, and we're going to have grants. And we're all going to go over what we need to do, what we need to iron out, and get it so that we get as close to December 31st is when I would like to issue. But we'll definitely do it before March 31st so that the uniform compliance one will come off. So I now have a staff in place. We'll iron out the issues, and by having all applicable parties at the table, we'll be able to iron it out and tell them this is important and that we're not juggling a budget and an audit and other issues all at once. Now we can finally focus on the audit and year end instead of multiple things at once, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Alderman McNamara?
Yeah, that it occurred to me that you're addressing the issue 22 to 23. Was it new staff or cross-training, would you say, that has helped things along?
A little bit of both. The new staff help to iron things out and be willing to do more than just look at in the blinders of, this is the way I've done it, and this is what I do, and that's how I've always done it. Now we understand that the culture has changed to say, think beyond yourself, and also look at the big picture. What you touch affects the other members in finance, and so by seeing the bigger picture and beginning with the end in mind, my newer staff helps to understand that piece. The other part with the cross-training, it's easy to cross-train when you lose one or two people. When you lose almost 75%, it's kind of tough to say, hey, you three do the other 9 in addition to your current stuff and not burn out. So that was part of the issue. And also trying to hire while doing your current job, it takes a lot of time, so.
Thank you. Alderman Santiago?
Just one of the recommendations from the audit was about having two individuals, one doing a ledger and another one correcting or going through it. Is that part of what you're utilizing as one of your?
It's for the non-recurring journal entries, like the higher level journal entries, we want more than one person to look at it. If it's a daily transaction of logging in revenue that happens on a regular basis, the accounting assistants can understand it. The other piece too is instead of just posting it and not looking at it, the other thing we've implemented is if you're posting a journal entry, send the backup to the department so they can review it immediately. And so that way, they'll request, hey, can you do this journal entry to reclass so-and-so? I've told my staff, yes, do it. Show the distribution number, show the journal entry, show it got posted, send it back so all applicable parties know it's done and posted in a timely manner and can review it. You're welcome.
Sounds complicated. Alderman McNamara?
I just move we accept this update as presented and move to the next item,
Great, thank you.
if there are no objections.
With no further questions or objections, we'll proceed as such. Thank you, Jonathan, appreciate it. Moving on to the 5th item on the agenda, I'll just make a point of order at this time that this item also is, at this time, not actionable, but for discussion, but could be made actionable with a resolution. So we'll just do another discussion here of item 5. It would require a resolution to make it actionable, similar to these other things, so.
Well, yeah, I think the last item pertains to what Jonathan advised us earlier, that this would be the year to do an RFQ and put the audit committee that we formed in January in action during this fiscal year. So what I'm requesting from finance to the audit committee, and we'll request a report to the audit committee on an RFQ to review,
Well,
and as well as a timetable. I'm sure there's a standard way to do it.
I can share that now so you guys understand it. The fiscal year 24 that we're jumping into, what happens is per state statute and the OPM, we have by June 1st to say who's going to be auditing our upcoming fiscal year. So June 1st, we mentioned that we were doing CLA for the final year of their contract that they had. So after we get the fiscal year 24 audit done, which we would look for December 31st of 24 to finish, we plan on doing an RFP to send it out February 1st, and I'd like to do it sooner than later because we need it to go through the audit subcommittee, council to approve, And then we have to let OPM know by June 1st who's going to audit it for fiscal year '25. So I just want to share the timetable. We want to begin with the end in mind, so June 1st is when we have to notify OPM by, but February 1st is when I want to send out the RFP to see who's willing to bid on it.
If I may, I'm sure there are, but can you point out, are there opportunities to weigh in on this RFP and what goes in it and what the city's looking for? What opportunities there are to weigh in on that?
Sure. What happens with the RFP, we would look for to do the general audit, but every time they do new standards, they tack on new fees. So what you saw was 87, that also slowed up fiscal year '22's audit because that was all lease agreements. So we had to go and find every lease and post it. And then for '23, we had to do software leases. So we have no backup, no nothing to originally come up with it. It just says, here, figure out this pronouncement. And so that actually slowed up the '23 audit. One of the last things at the beginning of June, we were fighting to get copies of software leases in order to complete that one. But in '24, as Leslie mentioned, there's no new pronouncements that are going to slow us down on that. So with the new upcoming RFP, we'd have to factor in if there were new pronouncements as well, in addition to the regular audit. And so we would draft up, we'd post it on the GFOA website, do an email blast, and ask for any and all applicable auditing firms that are interested, and have the available resources that are looking for new audit clients to put in for it. So we'd have to draft that and post it.
Thank you. Alderman McNamara?
And that process is done through the state OPM municipal audit, the CPA firms that do this sort of work.
Mm-hmm.
And so the timetable for the council audit committee, December, January of this fiscal year.
What do you mean for
Oh,
when it goes
oh,
to
you
the
wanna get
audit
an
committee?
If you want to get an RFQ out by February.
Yeah, we'd want to send it February 1st is the draft time to send it out. And then whether we do 3 weeks, a month to post and get the bid docs forward. So then March, we get them back. And then we go through the progressions to see who put in for it, how much, who's the lowest responsible, go through the motions to make sure that before it goes to council, it goes through the audit committee first, because it will probably go to council and then referred to the audit committee, correct? And then also look to see the interview process. We'd have to draft it up so that it's in accordance with the audit committee.
Right, that's, and again, all this is stemming from state law that makes the council the appointing authority,
Yes.
as well as this hearing we had tonight is per state statute. So that's why I want to be in compliance with all of that.
Thank you all. Alderwoman Saavedra?
So then, just a question, I don't know if it's to Mr. Perugini or to Alderman McNamara. Does the audit committee actually interview the folks that respond to the RFP?
I don't know yet. I haven't ironed out all the pieces of it. I just know we're going to draft one before February 1st.
But I'm trying to really, through you, Mr. Chair, figure out the authority of the audit committee. Are we just reviewing the RFQ and saying, yeah, it's good, and then you send it out and a separate team interviews? Or are we part, because I'm on the audit committee, are we part of developing the RFP, interviewing the folks, and then ultimately making a recommendation to who?
Yeah, I haven't had discussion on that, so I couldn't tell you.
Alderman McNamara?
I'd refer you to the ordinance in the audit committee that stipulates the role of the audit committee. I used to know it by heart, but I forgot. But I believe it is vetting the proposal and moving it on to the council for final action, so you can release it. But I'll share that language with you, Alderwoman Saavedra.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have reached the end of discussion. I want to thank everyone for that very informative and robust discussion. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, to our auditors.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to. All in favor? Thank you.